That year their parents died, and the company was on the verge of bankruptcy. Right when his sister needed him the most, he cut ties with her. 5 years later, her company went public. She made it to the top. She became the president of Vance, someone everyone looked up to. A reporter asked her, "Who are you most grateful to after all these years?" Her eyes were cold and her tone dripped with sarcasm. "The little brother who abandoned me for money." The reporter pressed on, "So how is he doing now?" A nationwide search for President Vance's younger brother was launched, 10 million reward. But no one ever found him. The only thing they found was the diary he left behind. When the reporter handed that diary to his sister, she froze on the spot. Her hand trembled as she took it. But in the very next second, she threw it straight into the trash. "Is this another one of Nate's tricks? Or did you people make this up for ratings?" The reporter shook his head and carefully picked the diary back up. "This really is the diary your brother left behind before he died. As for his body, it has already been cremated. Since no one came to claim him, the crematorium handled it." Before the reporter could even finish, his sister shot to her feet in fury. "Don't think I'll forgive him just because he's pulling something like this. Go tell Nate that I already have a brother now. To me, he is nothing. Even if he's dead, I wouldn't care." The reporter looked at her awkwardly. "Then what should we do with this diary?" Vanessa let out a cold laugh. "Go ahead and read it. I want to see how he plans to spin this. Hello, Mr. Diary. From now on, please take good care of me. I guess you're the only one left by my side now. Let me tell you a secret. Today, when I tried to leave with the gifts my family bought me, my sister caught me. I never even wanted to face her. I only wanted to leave that house without a sound. But she was so annoying. She grabbed my hand and refused to let go, crying that I was the only family she had left. For a moment, my heart shook, but in the end, I still looked at her coldly. Now that the company's gone under, can you still buy me the motorcycle models I like? I spend money like crazy. Can you even afford to keep me? Instead of staying with you, pinching pennies every single day, I might as well go find some rich woman willing to keep me. As it happens, I already know one. But my sister only got more anxious. She demanded to know who that person was and warned me not to get fooled. She even said she would work harder from now on and make a whole lot of money. She promised she would give me the kind of pampered young master life I used to have. But guess what I said to her? I'm willing to be fooled. What's it to you? If you had the ability and the money to support me, I'd still be your good little brother and I'd still come home. But when are you ever going to have that kind of money? My sister was always so proud, yet just to make me stay, she actually knelt down. Pretty pathetic, right? I turned my face away and wiped the tears from the corner of my eyes before she could see. I even slapped her, told her to stop clinging to me, stop ruining my future, and I went as far as saying I wanted to cut ties with her for good. That slap really stunned her. She froze where she stood, and all she could do was watch me drag my suitcase away. I'm sorry, sis. That must have hurt, didn't it? After finishing that page, the reporter took a deep breath. He never expected CEO Vance to rely on her younger brother that much. But when the camera turned to her, there was not the slightest trace of emotion on her face. She was still ice cold. She only said flatly, I do regret it. I regret treating him so well back then and raising an ungrateful snake. Mr. Diary, I'm back again. Today, I went to another hospital for more tests. Honestly, more than anything, I wish the first diagnosis had been a mistake. That way, I could go back and tell my sister I was sorry. If I just gave in and softened my attitude, she would definitely forgive me like she always used to. But life doesn't hand out that many miracles, does it? That older doctor looked at me seriously and said, where are your parents? Primary liver cancer. Late stage, you need to be hospitalized immediately. To be honest, I didn't fully understand everything he said. But the moment death sank in, I still broke down crying. I'm only 18. The doctor looked at me with pity. Then, he printed out the payment slip for my hospitalization. I ran over to the payment machine and took one look. In the end, I slipped out of the hospital anyway. Forget it. The card linked to it was my sister's main account, so I should save her some money. I'm dying soon anyway. Why waste her money? Every cent she has was earned the hard way. Ever since the contractor who worked with my parents ran off, the entire project blew up, and the cash flow collapsed with it. My parents were crushed by the pressure and ran around everywhere trying to fix it. Then, on the way back from one of their business dinners, they got into a car accident and both died. From that point on, the whole company landed on my sister's shoulders alone. I saw those debt collectors with my own eyes. To get their money back, they cleared out every valuable thing in the house. And just to preserve the hundreds of thousands meant for my overseas studies, my sister even knelt on the floor and kowtowed to them. But in the end, the bank still seized all the remaining assets to settle the debt. My sister borrowed money everywhere she could, and drank so much at business tables that she ended up with stomach bleeding. She was hospitalized, but she had neither the time to rest nor the money to get proper treatment, so the moment she regained consciousness, she checked herself out. Then she went right back out to chase clients, begging everyone she could, lowering herself to the bone just to survive. I cried and begged her to wait until she got better before going back to work. But she only said she was made of steel and nothing would happen to her. Tell me, isn't my sister kinda stupid? I really did want to help carry some of her burden. I really wanted to tell her I didn't need to study abroad. I wasn't that spoiled young master anymore. I could give all of that up. I could even go work part-time and earn money to support her. But I never thought that at the worst possible moment, I'd come down with the kind of illness that burns through money the fastest. Mr. Diary, do you also think I'm useless? The reporter's eyes turned red. So it looks like your brother really did have his reasons for leaving you back then. He got liver cancer at such a young age, that's just heartbreaking. Vanessa let out a cold laugh. Heh, not bad. That pity act is pretty convincing. Reporter Carter, don't let him fool you. Nate has always been a liar. When he was little, he once told our parents he had twisted his ankle just to skip school. The whole family panicked and rushed around him before taking him straight to the hospital. He's always been good at acting. Mr. Diary, I couldn't sleep again last night. It's not that I didn't want to. It just hurt too much to fall asleep. The illness keeps getting worse. If I don't buy painkillers, I really can't endure it anymore. But I don't have any money, and right now, there's something even more urgent. If I don't pay the rent soon, the landlord's going to throw me out. Looks like I'm really about to experience that sleeping under a bridge thing my sister used to joke about when we were kids. Back when I read martial arts novels, I used to think heroes sleeping under bridges looked kind of cool. But now that I'm older, all I feel is fear. Being broke is terrifying, so I put the gifts Mom and Dad gave me up for sale online. They were some of the very few things I had left with me. But whenever someone actually came asking about them, I always found some excuse to turn them down. In the end, I just couldn't part with them, but by then, I was in so much pain and so hungry I could barely hold on. I really couldn't take it anymore, so I withdrew $500 from the card. I'm sorry sis, I spent your money again. After becoming poor, I realized my old picky eating habits had finally been cured. When I was so hungry, I was about to pass out. I even picked up a dirty steamed bun someone had thrown into the trash and ate it. Honestly, it didn't even taste that bad. Looks like poverty really can cure every spoiled rich kid habit. I went to the supermarket and bought a bag of plain buns and a bottle of water. Then I went to the hospital and bought some painkillers. The rest of the money, I should save it for rent. My teacher called me again. He told me to focus on my studies and said it was such a waste for someone with grades like mine to suddenly start skipping class. I was afraid he'd go to my sister, so I said I wanted to drop out. But in the end, he still called her. My sister called me just now. Her voice was stiff and cold. I don't care what kind of woman you've latched onto, but you should never have thrown away the studies you were always so proud of for her. If you keep sinking like this, how are you going to face Mom and Dad? I hadn't even heard my sister's voice for more than 10 days, but to me it felt like half a lifetime. I covered my mouth so I wouldn't cry out loud, but the tears just wouldn't stop. Sis, I miss you so much. On the other end, she grew impatient and threw out one last line. If you keep this up, I really will stop caring about you. After she hung up, I cried for a long time. Mr. Diary, maybe I should just block my sister after all. Tomorrow, I'll go take care of the withdrawal paperwork. Seeing President Vance fall into a brief daze, the reporter paused for a moment, wiped the moisture from the corner of his eye, and turned the page. Mr. Diary, I moved. That inn I was staying at charged $50 a night. It was just too expensive. I spent the entire day running all over the city before I finally found a shabby little place in a remote urban village on the south side of town that only charged $30 a night. There were 4 beds in the room. A creepy middle-aged man stayed across from me, and the moment I saw him, I got scared. I looked at that older sister gratefully. She slept in the bunk below mine, and her name was Xiaoyan, though she went by Summer. She looked up at me and smiled. Relax, big sis has your back. Sister Summer was really nice. That night, after I took my medicine, I slept surprisingly well. I had a dream. In it, Mom and Dad took my sister and me to Disneyland. Because she knew I liked Iron Man, my sister stood in line for hours for me. And when it was finally her turn, she called out my name, then pushed me right in front of the Iron Man performer. I finally got to take a picture with the hero I loved, and I was grinning so hard my eyes almost disappeared. Mom, Dad, and my sister were standing not far away, smiling as they watched me. But when I turned back after the photo, they were all gone. And the bright sunny sky suddenly turned dark. I got scared instantly, but no matter how hard I looked, I couldn't find them. I woke up in a panic, covered in cold sweat. Sister Summer looked at me with worry all over her face. You okay? I shook my head. Then she asked me why I was living in a place like this. I told her everything. I don't know why, but I just trusted her. After hearing it all, she didn't say a word. She just pulled me into a hug. Her arms were warm. She told me she was an orphan, and after being adopted, she was abused by her adoptive father. In the end, she couldn't take it anymore, so she ran away. Since her teens, she'd been surviving out in the streets, meeting all kinds of people and picking up more than a few ways to protect herself. She told me, Someone like you needs someone like me watching over you. Sister Summer taught me all kinds of little tricks to save money, like checking supermarkets for expired food. Some stores would give you a little compensation, some wouldn't, but a lot of them would let you take the expired food for free. She also took me to the market to pick up discarded vegetable leaves the aunties had thrown away. If you cut off the rotten parts and blanched the rest in hot water, it was still enough to fill your stomach. Sister Summer even took me to do part-time work so I could earn a little extra cash. I made 60 in just one afternoon. Holding that money in my hand, I felt for the first time that maybe I wasn't completely useless. I couldn't help thinking, if I could make this much every day, maybe after I die, I could still leave some money behind for my sister. That thought made me laugh out loud. Sister Summer looked at me like I was an idiot. "You're this happy over 60 bucks?" She tapped my forehead and called me hopeless. Other than having to stay on guard against that creepy man every single day, I also had to hurry and wash up before everyone else and get into bed fast. Because this inn cut off both water and electricity at 10 every night. Honestly, the days I spent staying there were still pretty happy. It's almost time for the power to go out again. Good night. The reporter noticed that when he got to the part about the sleazy old man, even the always cold President Vance quietly clenched her fist. He thought that maybe President Vance didn't actually hate her brother as much as she pretended to. But a moment later, he wondered if maybe he had only imagined it. He turned the page and kept reading. "Mr. Diary, I moved out because yesterday she saw me coughing up blood. She clearly didn't have any savings herself, but she still insisted on taking me to the hospital. Before that, I never told her I was sick. I only said I'd moved out because I'd fallen out with my sister. But I couldn't hide it from her after all. Maybe I really am bad luck. I don't want to drag Sister Summer down with me, and I definitely don't want to burden this righteous big sister I've only known for such a short time. She once told me that the reason she worked so hard was because one day she wanted to open an auto repair shop of her own and have a home that belonged to her too. I'm not going to let you die this young." When she said that, her eyes were full of stubborn fire. I smiled and nodded, but what I was really thinking was, "Goodbye, sis." Early the next morning, I quietly dragged my few remaining bags out and left. Squatting here while writing this diary for so long made my legs go numb. Let me rest for a second. Alright, my body's getting worse lately. I've started coughing up blood. I just threw up blood again a moment ago. The people passing by were scared half to death when they saw me like that. They kept their distance and pointed at me from far away. I curled up into myself and only lifted my head after a long while. That was when I noticed blood had dripped onto my diary. I hurried to wipe it off, but the stain only spread wider the more I rubbed. "I'm sorry, Mr. Diary. I got you dirty too. I didn't mean to, it just hurt so much I can't control it." While I was crouched there trying to recover, an auntie in worn-out clothes walked up to me. She stuffed some money into my hand. No matter how much I tried to refuse, she still tossed the money down and ran off. I quietly followed after her and found out she had a disabled husband with her. In his arms was a very young child. She brushed her hair back, then leaned down and kissed the baby on the cheek. After that, she went right back to calling out and selling fruit. I stayed there for a long time, all the way until it got dark, and half my body was numb from the cold. More than half of her fruit was still left unsold. She let out a sigh, and her husband softly said a few words to comfort her. The two of them started packing up and set the baby down in a basket beside them. I pulled my cap low and walked over quickly. When she wasn't looking, I quietly slipped the money back into the baby's clothes. Hearing that, Vanessa said coldly, "Heh, nice story." I almost got moved for a second. "What now? His sugar mommy ran out of money, so he started writing fiction to make a living?" Reporter Carter, there's no need to keep reading. I'm ridiculous myself for sitting here and wasting this much time. Since he's pretending to be dead and won't come out to face me, then I'll just treat him like he really is dead. Either way, I don't care. After saying that, Vanessa stood up and turned away without the slightest hesitation. The interview ended right there. But that episode of the program exploded online. People quickly dug up the fact that after President Vance cut ties with her brother 5 years ago, she had been frequently seen going in and out of a psychiatric clinic. So the internet started speculating that after losing her parents and being betrayed by her brother, she had developed severe depression. Later, once the company started getting back on its feet, she adopted another younger brother. And the diary left behind by President Vance's brother sparked an even bigger storm online. Some people cursed Nate out, saying he would do anything for attention, even fake his own death. Back then, he abandoned his own sister for money. He left her alone to face the company's collapse. And he dealt her an enormous psychological blow. Now that he saw his sister had made it big, he was playing the pity card for sympathy, even writing a diary like this. Too bad for him. President Vance already has a new younger brother now. Rumor has it that for that boy's 18th birthday, she rented out an entire amusement park. She even gave him a limited edition sports car and spoiled him like he was the most precious thing in the world. But there were also people who felt there might really be more to the story. The diary felt too real, and the emotions in it felt too sincere. They couldn't believe that someone who wrote something like that could truly be nothing more than a greedy gold digger. No matter which side people took, everyone online was waiting to see what Nate's next diary entry would reveal. For the sake of ratings, the station's reporters contacted President Vance again. They asked whether she agreed to make her brother's final diary public. Whether she truly didn't believe it or simply didn't care, her assistant replied, "President Vance said the diary has already been handed over to your station. Whether you publish it or destroy it, she has no objection." The assistant added one more thing. President Vance had made it clear that she only had one younger brother now, Hugo. A portion of the viewers found that incredibly satisfying. They wanted to see whether Nate could keep acting, since she clearly didn't care about him at all. After getting authorization, the station soon aired a live program called Nate's Diary Before Death. On screen, the reporter wore a solemn expression. "Just like all of you, I haven't read this diary in advance either. Now that I've received President Vance's authorization, I'm sharing it live with everyone today. I just hope people will be kind with their words." In an instant, hundreds of thousands of viewers flooded into the live stream. In less than a minute, the number passed 1 million, and everyone was waiting for reporter Carter to open the diary. Over at the Vance residence, the assistant Ivy looked at President Vance with a complicated expression. After hesitating for a long time, she finally spoke. "President Vance, the program has started." President Vance didn't even lift her eyes. "I already said I don't want to hear anything about him again." Reporter Carter took a deep breath and opened the diary. "Mr. Diary, today I found a puppy. At first I didn't want to get involved, but it kept dragging its injured leg after me, whimpering the whole time. I knew I was in no condition to take care of it, so I forced myself to keep walking. But after only 2 steps, I turned back. The moment I picked it up, the little yellow dog's eyes lit up. It kept licking my palm with its tongue. I let out a sigh. It must have seen right through me and realized I'm soft-hearted. I named it Ever. I just hoped it would be lucky and live long, not end up short-lived like me. I took it to a pet hospital, and the examination fee alone emptied out my wallet. The surgery afterward would cost another $2,000. If it didn't get the operation, it would die. Holding Ever in my arms, I begged the doctor carefully, "Could I bring him back in a few days for surgery? I don't have the money right now." But the doctor said it couldn't be delayed any longer. Tomorrow was the absolute latest. I carried Ever out of the pet hospital and sat down blankly on a street corner. I whispered to it, "You're so dumb. Out of all the rich people in the world, you had to choose someone like me, a dying man. And that's not even the worst part. I'm broke too. Where am I supposed to find $2,000 for you?" The puppy couldn't understand a word I said. It just wagged its tail happily, as if celebrating the fact that it finally had a home. Looking at it, my eyes grew wet again. Left with no choice, I walked over to an ATM and hesitated, wanting to withdraw $2,000. "Sis, let this be the last time I ever spend your money." But what I never expected was that my sister had already frozen my secondary card. My heart sank. Then again, I was the one who said I wanted to cut ties with her. She had no reason to keep giving me money. I never thought I'd contact my sister again, but this time I had no choice. It was forever. So I took her number off my block list. Then I called her. The line rang for a long time. Just when I thought she wouldn't pick up, she finally answered and let out a cold snort. "Heh, regretting it now? You blocked me, and now you're the one calling me first. Weren't you the one who said you wanted to cut ties with me? Or what? Are you out of money now?" The moment my sister spoke, every word I had prepared got stuck in my throat. For a second, I wanted nothing more than to hang up right there. But Ever in my arms was like a reminder, "Speak up, save me." After a moment of silence, my sister questioned me coldly again. "You didn't contact me for so long. You didn't care whether your sister was eating well, sleeping well, or whether she missed you. You called me just to ask for money, didn't you?" I bit down hard on my lip. A salty metallic taste rose up from my throat, and I forced it back down. In the end, I answered mechanically, "Yes." On the other end of the line, my sister's voice sounded choked. "So you want money? Fine, I'll give you all of it. Are you satisfied now? I never should have kept hoping for anything from you. Nate, you really don't have a heart. From today on, I'm cutting all ties with you as your sister." The moment she hung up, I finally couldn't hold it in anymore. I crouched down with Ever in my arms and threw up. Blood, so much blood, but against the dark ground, somehow it barely even showed. Ever looked terrified out of his mind, whining non-stop. He kept licking my face again and again. I reached out and gently stroked him to calm him down. It hurt, but after a certain point, even pain starts to go numb. Just compared to my body, my heart hurt even more. When I looked back at my phone, I saw that my sister had transferred $20,000 to me. When I tried to send the extra money back to her, I realized she had already blocked me. I held Ever and cried for a long time. I knew it then. My sister really had abandoned me for good this time. Back then, I used to wish she would forget me and completely cut ties with me. But now that she had actually done it, I was in so much pain I could barely breathe. Ever, I don't have a home anymore. The comments flew by like crazy. Why is this so brutal? Even if this guy is faking his death, this story is way too heartbreaking. I'm already crying. Hurry up and keep reading. What happened to Ever? A puppy can't talk. It only knows how to celebrate finally having a home. That line destroyed me. There were still some people in the live stream cursing Nate for acting, fishing for sympathy, and playing the victim. But compared to before, they were only a tiny minority now. At this point, what everyone really cared about was whether Ever was safe. Under the flood of urgent comments, reporter Carter steadied his emotions and turned the page. Mr. Diary, long time no see, here's some good news. Ever had the surgery, and now he's healthy. The only problem is that he's become an incredibly clingy dog. Wherever I go, he follows. Even when I sleep, he insists on curling up right by my feet. But there's bad news too. My illness has gotten worse. I don't know how much longer I can live. Maybe I don't even have a month left. Now, whenever I go to the pharmacy to buy a large amount of painkillers, the clerks always look at me with suspicion, like they think I'm some kind of addict. Luckily, I still have my diagnosis papers. If I plead long enough, they usually soften in the end and sell them to me. But the painkillers are working less and less. Just to fall asleep, I have to take more every time. Yesterday, while I was handing out flyers, I suddenly collapsed by the roadside. Ever was terrified. He kept licking my face and barking at me. In the end, some kind-hearted passerby finally noticed and sent me to the hospital, even paying some money for me. I painfully did the math. Not only did I fail to get paid for the part-time job, I ended up losing a big chunk of money instead. The doctor said, you need to be hospitalized immediately and your family has to be notified right away. If this keeps going, then very soon you might... He never finished the sentence, but I already knew what he meant. I brushed him off with a few perfunctory replies and hurried out of the hospital. Hospitalization? No way, it costs way too much. But when I reached the hospital entrance, I found Ever there. The second he saw me, he sprinted straight toward me. But that night, I was still in so much pain that I kept tossing and turning, unable to sleep. Ever noticed how much I was hurting? He was frantic, but there was nothing he could do. So all he could do was press himself tightly against me. Then he kept licking me over and over, like he was about to cry. I weakly raised my hand to comfort him, telling him it was okay. But the next second, I couldn't help but rush out and throw up into the toilet. It felt like I was going to throw up everything inside me. I don't know how much time passed. I threw up until my vision went dark. Later, I regained consciousness to the feeling of Ever licking me. I looked in the mirror and even scared myself. I look so ugly. My hair is thinning and my face is sallow. The cheeks that used to be round are now so hollow, my chin looks sharp. My sister used to joke that my baby face made me look completely harmless. But now it seems I really am going to be stuck with this face forever. Staying young forever doesn't seem like such a good thing after all. I want to grow up, little by little, to stay by my sister's side, watch her start a family, build her career, and live a happy, perfect life. I washed my face and patted my cheeks to cheer myself up. I guess there's a bright side. It's a good thing my sister can't see what I look like now, or she'd definitely be terrified. I took my painkillers and barely managed to fall asleep. In the middle of the night, my fever came back. Mr. Diary, it hurt so much. Honestly, I really miss my sister. I just want to see her one more time. Just from a distance, that would be enough. A wish like that shouldn't be too much to ask, right? I'm heading out to see her now. I'm taking Ever with me. I prepared a hat, a mask, and a black trench coat for this. Looking cool like a paparazzo. I just need one look at her from far away. Mr. Diary, I'm back. My sister was just as beautiful and capable as she used to be. She got taller, but she's thinner too. I originally just wanted to take one look and leave, but she looked so unhappy. She used to love smiling so much. Before I knew it, I started following her. I didn't know why she was going to the hospital. Why was she seeing a psychotherapist? After she left, I asked her attending doctor. She refused to tell me, saying it was patient privacy. Only after I begged her over and over again did she finally sigh and talk about my sister's condition. My sister's sick. She's very sick. Our parents' deaths hit her incredibly hard, and my leaving made her blame herself even more. She felt she was useless and couldn't take care of me, which was why I despised her and left. Because of this, my sister even started hurting herself. I cried, and as I cried, I started laughing. My sister is so stupid. I'm clearly the useless one. I only know how to drag her down. She is the best sister in the world. She would save up her allowance for an entire year just to buy me an expensive birthday gift. She would beat up the bullies at school who picked on me until they couldn't get back up, even if it meant she would get punished for it. After our parents died, she handled everything and carried all that pressure entirely on her own, while still giving me a comfortable life. How could I ever despise her? Reporter Carter suddenly paused and showed the diary to the camera. Everyone noticed that on this page, besides the neat handwriting, there were also traces of teardrops that had soaked the paper and dried. He must have cried for a very long time, his tears wetting this entire page of the diary. Reporter Carter's eyes also couldn't help but grow wet, he adjusted his voice, which was trembling from being choked up. "Mr. Diary, I'm so useless. I can't do anything." I watched helplessly as my sister brushed past me, and I didn't even have the courage to step forward and hug her. In the brief moment our eyes met, she looked away. She couldn't recognize me anymore. Well, it makes sense. Looking like some half-human, half-ghost monster right now, it's best if she never sees me again. I don't want to make her sad. Mr. Diary, I've made up my mind. Instead of dying in this much pain, I might as well end my life on my own terms. Do you think I'm doing the right thing? The illness really is messing with my head. I talk to you all the time, and I talk to Ever, acting as if you guys could actually answer me. But what about Ever? I can't just leave him behind. I want to give Ever to my sister to keep her company. That way Ever gets taken care of too. I really am too smart. But then I suddenly remembered tomorrow is my birthday. I guess I'll hold on for one more day. I don't want to die on my birthday. On my 17th birthday last year, Mom and Dad had a custom limited edition gaming setup made just for me. After I opened it, Dad kept patting my shoulder and laughing, saying I was the coolest kid around. My sister gave me a mechanical watch too, its face gleaming under the light. Obviously expensive. But all of those gifts were long gone, taken away with the rest of the assets when everything got seized. The only things still with me now are the presents that were not worth much money. I carry them with me everywhere I go. Even when I had no money left to eat, I still could not bring myself to sell a single one. When I sleep, I hold that brown teddy bear Mom bought me when I was 8, like I'm holding her instead. Mom, Dad, and my sister once told me that when my coming of age day arrived, they would throw me the grandest birthday party ever to celebrate their little young master turning 18. But now, it feels like the only one still with me is Ever. When I hold him, that is the only warmth I have left. Ever seemed to sense my feelings. He started licking my palm and my cheek over and over with his wet tongue, like he was trying to warm me back to life. It tickled a little, and I ended up smiling as I kissed Ever once. I carried him to a cake shop because I wanted to buy myself a little cake. Back when I had birthdays before, I never even liked the 3 or 4 tier cakes my parents ordered. But now that I had gone so long without one, I was practically drooling over it. I stood there for a long time, heart aching as I stared at the price tag in the hundreds. The clerk walked over impatiently and asked, "Are you buying or not? If not, move along." Then she glanced at Ever in my arms and frowned. No pets allowed in the store, but I had literally just seen a guy come in, holding a poodle. Maybe it was just because Ever looked dirty, and I had no money to take him to a pet salon for a bath. I apologized again and again, and in the end, I only bought the cheapest chocolate cake cup they had, $20. I found a bench in the park and sat down with Ever in my arms. There were no candles, so I just acted the whole candle blowing part out silently in my head. Then I closed my eyes and made a wish. I wished for Ever to stay safe. I wished for my sister to rise high, live long, and have a happy life. When I opened my eyes, I fed some of the cake to Ever. He ate it happily, like he was celebrating my coming of age with me. I was craving it so badly myself, but after only a few bites, I bent over to the side and threw everything up. In the end, I still took Ever to a pet shop and spent $200 getting him cleaned up. The owner said he had never seen such a well-behaved little dog before. I took clean, fluffy Ever back into my arms. He smelled so nice that I could not help taking a deep breath. Ever is the gift heaven gave me, and now I want to give that gift to my sister. I hope she can take good care of Ever for me, and I hope Ever can stay by her side in my place. As for the 20,000 still left on the card, I want to secretly slip that through the crack of my sister's door too. If nothing unexpected happens, this probably won't be updated again. Because tomorrow, I'm going to another world to see Mom and Dad. Mr. Diary, I'm going to miss you. Ever, I'll be watching over you too. And my sister, I'll keep protecting you, always and forever. It should have ended there, but reporter Carter instinctively turned to the next page and saw the words written on it. I'm sorry, Ever. I failed to take care of you. Did my sister think you already belonged to someone? Or did she just not want you? I was hiding not far away, planning to leave only after my sister took Ever with her. But Ever broke free from the leash and ran straight toward me. If I had placed him in my sister's hands myself, would he have been okay? I kept crying and begging Ever over and over, don't leave me, please don't leave me. But he still struggled to lift his head, let out a soft whimper, licked my face, and then closed his eyes. I held Ever in my arms and sang to him softly, little puppy, open up the door. But before I knew it, I was already crying so hard, my face was soaked with tears. I'd buried Ever on the small slope beside Mom and Dad's graves. The moon tonight isn't full, but it's bright. Looks like I won't make it to the 15th. Ever. Run a little slower. I'm coming to find you now. And, Mom, Dad, Sis. Goodbye. By the time reporter Carter finished reading the diary, his eyes were already overflowing with tears. The live stream comments exploded instantly. What do you mean Ever died? Nate died too? This is brutal. The guy dying is one thing, but why kill the dog too? What did the puppy ever do wrong? Ever is too pitiful. Don't stab me with the dog storyline. So is Nate really dead or not? Is this just for the show? Can somebody tell me? In a low voice, reporter Carter answered, according to the official police records from back then, as well as our own investigation, Nate did in fact die 5 years ago. This is not a stunt, and it is not a fake death. Please show some respect for the dead. As for this diary, we will preserve it properly. We will not be responding to any further questions. Thank you. With that, reporter Carter ended the live stream on the spot. But the internet's curiosity was far from satisfied, so people immediately flooded President Vance's social media with private messages. Her comment section was buried under a storm of replies. The search volume became so massive that related topics shot straight onto the trending list. President Vance's brother Nate is dead? Was Nate's diary really true? At the same time, Summer, the woman mentioned in the diary, made a post online. Is Nate really dead? I'm sorry. After he disappeared without saying goodbye, I looked for him for a long time and never found him. I failed him. If I had taken him to the hospital sooner, he wouldn't have left so early, and he wouldn't have suffered that much. At first, most people were skeptical of what Summer said. But then she posted a photo of the two of them together. In it, the smiling young man looked almost identical to the Nate photo that had already spread online, and only then did people finally believe her. In an instant, the internet completely broke down. At last, everyone believed the diary was real. The whole internet began mourning Nate and Ever. One trending topic after another exploded online. Nate, Ever, we're bringing you home. Nate, Ever, are you okay in the other world? The storm of public reaction finally reached President Vance's assistant. She stared at her phone for a long time. After hesitating again and again, she finally spoke. President Vance, 5 years ago, did you ever see a dog? A pale yellow one? President Vance looked at her in confusion, then after a moment, nodded. That day, when I came home from the office, I did see a little dog, tied beside the pillar at the entrance. Its fur was a light creamy yellow, its nose was pink, and it looked clean and adorable. At a glance, it was obvious it belonged to someone. I remembered that he liked small animals too, so I walked over and petted it. The dog was very well behaved. It kept wagging its tail at me. I assumed its owner would come back soon, so I went inside. Not long after that, I heard a commotion outside. I walked to the window and looked out, and I saw a young man standing in the middle of the road, holding that little dog and crying. He was crying so hard. That must have been the dog's owner. Later, I heard that the dog couldn't find its owner, got anxious, broke free from its leash, and was hit by a car. The assistant froze, and then her phone suddenly rang. She lowered her eyes to the file that had just come through, and her heart seized instantly. President Vance, I'm sorry. During this time, I investigated the diary behind your back, and I also looked into your brother's whereabouts. He really is dead. The police registered his death certificate 5 years ago. It's real. It can't be faked. He died by poisoning, and the diary is real too. After saying that, the assistant did not even dare look at President Vance's reaction. She could only lower her head and open the related reports. Please look at it. This is what happened to Nate. Afterward, his diary has already been made public across the internet today. When she reached the door, she still could not help adding one more sentence. Your brother, he really had it hard. After walking out of President Vance's office, Heidi gently closed the door behind her. The moment that soft click sounded, it felt as if the whole world had been sealed off outside. Inside the office, only Vanessa remained. And, in her hands, was that investigation file, heavy enough to crush her. The air seemed to freeze solid. The cold indifference and composure she had forced herself to maintain collapsed like a punctured balloon in an instant. She did not even have the courage to open the file right away. Her icy fingers only brushed along the rough edge of the paper. But in her mind, the scenes from the interview kept flashing back. Out of control, the unnatural tightening in her chest the moment reporter Carter pulled out the diary. The tiny stabs of doubt and pain she had forced down, when she heard the diary entries being read aloud, and that one sentence, "I wanted to keep my sister company and make sure Ever would have someone to care for him." At the time, she had dismissed it as one of Nate's clumsy lies. But now, those words were like poison needles, driving into her heart one after another. At last, trembling, she opened the file. The very first page was a black and white photocopy of the death certificate issued by the police. The format was brutally cold. Name Nate, sex male, date of death the autumn of 5 years ago. Only 3 months had passed between that final phone call and his death. Cause of death, poisoning. Place of discovery, a small grove near the suburban riverside. Right beside the grave where he had written that his parents' ashes were buried. Person who found the body, an elderly man out walking his bird at dawn. Handling of remains, unclaimed. Cremated by the funeral home according to regulations. Ashes temporarily stored, later given ecological disposal after the storage period expired. Every single word felt like a dull blade sawing back and forth across her heart, and the word unclaimed struck her like a real slap across the face. What had she been doing back then? Sinking in the rage and pain of being betrayed, maybe sitting in some psychiatric clinic receiving treatment, maybe forcing a smile at some banquet, maybe never once truly checking whether he was still alive somewhere in this world. Behind those pages were photocopies of several scene photos. The resolution was low, but still clear enough to show the truth. A young man so thin he was nearly reduced to bones. He was leaning quietly against the trunk of a tree, wearing the black coat he had mentioned in the diary. His hat covered most of his face, and at his feet were scattered empty medicine bottles and strips of sleeping pills. In his arms, he was clutching a worn brown teddy bear. Vanessa recognized it almost instantly. It was the birthday gift their mother had given him when he turned 8. She never imagined he had carried it with him all this time. Another photo showed the place where the diary had been found. It was lying right beside him, carefully wrapped in a plastic bag, as if he had been afraid the dew might soak through it. Even at the very end, he had still been trying to protect the only diary that would listen to him. Vanessa's breathing turned ragged, and her vision blurred in an instant. She clapped a hand over her mouth, but she still could not stop, the shattered sob rising from deep inside her chest. The tears she thought she had long since run out of burst through their dam at last, burning down her face like molten water. "Nate. My Nate," she whispered hoarsely, her voice so ruined that even she barely recognized it. It was not a pity act. It was not some fabricated story. Nate had really been sick. He really had fallen into poverty, and in the final stretch of his life, he had really endured the torment of illness and the cruelty and indifference of the world all alone. And even then, the person he could not stop thinking about was still her, the sister who had failed him. He had said all those terrible things on purpose, using the cruelest words possible to push her away. Not because he did not love her, but because he loved her too much. He would rather carry all the blame and all the pain himself than become her burden. And what about her? What had she done? She had believed his act. She had hated him for 5 whole years. And even after learning that he was dead, she had still said, with her own mouth, "Even if he's dead, I wouldn't care." She had adopted a new younger brother, trying to use another bond to fill the hollow Nate had left behind. But from beginning to end, she had never truly tried to understand the resolve behind the way he left. An overwhelming tide of regret and guilt crashed over her and swallowed her whole. Suddenly, she remembered their final phone call when she had choked out, "I gave you all my money. Are you satisfied now? I never should have expected anything from you. Nate, you really don't have a heart." Then she had hung up ruthlessly and blocked him with her own hands. How much must those words have hurt when he heard them? Did he cough up blood again after that? Did he hold that little dog named Ever and cry until he completely broke apart? The pain she had suppressed for far too long finally tore its way out of her throat and became one sharp, ragged wail. Vanessa could not hold herself together any longer. She slid from the chair and collapsed onto the carpet. Curled into herself like a lost child, she broke down and sobbed. That cry was filled with despair, guilt, and the kind of pain that could never be undone. She pounded the floor like she had gone mad, her nails almost digging into the expensive carpet fibers. I could have saved him. I could have recognized him. How did I not recognize him? That thought kept chewing through her sanity again and again, like something rabid. That day, outside the psychiatric clinic, that young man wearing a mask and cap, so thin he barely looked human anymore, had been her Nate. He had looked right at her, and she had coldly turned her eyes away. If only she had stopped back then. If only she had stepped forward and asked one more question. But life had no such ifs. Outside the office, Ivy and several secretaries listened to the sound of her breakdown from inside. They exchanged glances, their eyes filled with worry and sympathy. But none of them dared go in and disturb her. They all knew President Vance needed this collapse, and she also had to face this bloody truth herself. Vanessa did not know how long she cried. She cried until her voice was ruined, and it felt as though even her tears had run dry. But her body still would not stop trembling, and broken sobs kept forcing their way out of her throat. She lay collapsed on the floor, staring blankly at the luxurious chandelier on the ceiling, feeling as though all color had drained out of the world. The next day, Vanessa did not come to the office. After handling the urgent matters, Ivy went to Vanessa's villa at dusk, carrying her worry with her. She opened the door with the spare key, and a heavy smell of alcohol hit her in the face. The living room was a complete mess, with empty bottles scattered everywhere. Vanessa was still wearing yesterday's business suit, curled up in the corner of the couch. Her hair was a mess, her eyes were swollen, and tear tracks still lingered on her face. But in her hand, she was still clutching the photocopy of the diary so tightly it was as if she would never let it go. President Vance. Ivy stepped closer with extreme care. Vanessa slowly raised her head, but her gaze was unfocused. It took a long while before her eyes finally settled on Ivy's face. Ivy. Her voice was so hoarse it was barely audible. Did he hate me? In the end, did he hate me? Ivy's heart ached. She crouched down and gently took the empty bottle away from Vanessa's side. President Vance, based on what was written in the diary, Mr. Nate never hated you. Even at the very end, all he wanted was for you to be happy. Happy? Vanessa repeated the word in a low voice. I lost him. What right do I have to be happy? As she said it, she reached for another bottle. Ivy stopped her hand. President Vance, you can't keep going like this. If Mr. Nate could see you hurting yourself like this, he would never be at peace in heaven. Heaven? Vanessa murmured, and tears spilled out again. She was so afraid of pain. How terrified must he have been, leaving all alone. Ethan ever wasn't there beside him anymore. The only thing he had left to hold was that bear Mom gave him. She could not go on. All that was left was silent weeping. It took Ivy a great deal of effort to finally get Vanessa onto the bed. Then she gave her some water. Ivy watched as Vanessa drifted into a hazy sleep, but even in sleep, her brows were still tightly drawn together. Ivy let out a quiet sigh. She knew Vanessa needed time, but if she stayed like this, what would happen to the company? And what would happen to her own health? In the days that followed, Vanessa seems like a completely different person. She stopped going to the office and refused to handle any work at all. She locked herself inside the villa all day with nothing but bottles for company. She tried to drown herself in alcohol and numb everything away, but the hazier her drunkenness became, the clearer Nate's image grew. The way he used to trail behind her as a child, calling out sis in that soft little voice. The way he acted during puberty, rebellious, awkward, and stubborn in all the wrong ways. And then, that final image of him in the night, clutching the dead puppy and crying with that helpless, shattered little frame. Hugo, the younger brother she had adopted in name, called her from overseas on video. On the screen was a face that resembled Nate in some ways, but it had also been carefully polished by all the money and indulgence she had poured into him. The moment Vanessa looked at that face, a violent wave of disgust and guilt rose inside her. What exactly had she been doing? Had she really been searching for a replacement? It was unfair to Hugo, and for Nate it felt even more like desecration. She suddenly lost control and shouted at the concerned face on the screen, frightening Hugo so badly that he was left at a loss. Not long after that, she arranged for Hugo to be sent to an excellent boarding school. She also set up a large trust fund for him, enough to leave him secure for the rest of his life. In the email she sent Hugo, there was only one sentence. I'm sorry, I was never a good sister. Go live your own life. Just like that, she severed all ties with this substitute, as if doing so might lessen, even a little, the debt she owed her real brother. The company's business began to nosedive, and the shareholders were full of complaints. The media also started running speculative reports, saying President Vance had suffered a mental collapse because of personal issues. Ivy was overwhelmed from every angle, but even she could not wake Vanessa from the swamp of pain and self-blame she had sunk into. The turning point came Late one night. That night, Vanessa collapsed drunk on the living room carpet yet again. In the space between sleep and waking, she thought she saw Nate standing right in front of her. He was wearing a clean white shirt, and his smile was just as bright and warm as it had been when he was younger. At his feet was that pale yellow little dog, Ever, wagging its tail happily. "Sis," the Nate in the vision said softly, "please stop torturing yourself like this, okay?" "Nate." Vanessa reached out desperately, but her hand closed on nothing. Tears blurred her vision at once. I'm sorry. Your sister was wrong. I never blamed you," the vision of Nate said, still smiling so gently. "Seeing how incredible you've become now really does make me happy. I'm proud of you, sis. Please carry my share with you too. Live well for me. Be happy for me too. That's my biggest wish." "Nate," Vanessa choked on her sobs, barely able to form the word. "Promise me, sis." "I promise you, I promise," Vanessa shouted, jolting upright from the carpet. But the living room was empty. Only moonlight poured in through the windows. There was no sign of Nate anywhere, and yet the dream felt frighteningly vivid, as if Nate's words were still echoing beside her ear. A fresh wave of overwhelming grief crashed over her. But this time, buried inside that grief, there seemed to be one faint, yet unshakable strand of strength. That was right. Even at the very end, all Nate wanted was for her to be happy. If she kept ruining herself like this, how heartbroken would Nate be if he were watching from above? She could not let Nate down, and she absolutely could not let his sacrifice become meaningless. Early the next morning, when Ivy arrived at the villa again, carrying all the same worry with her, she was shocked to find that Vanessa was already up. She had showered and changed into clean clothes. Her face was still pale and drawn, but the emptiness in her eyes was gone. In its place was a brutal kind of clarity and resolve. "Ivy, contact the best private doctor you can find. I want a full medical checkup. And notify the board. We're holding a video meeting this afternoon. President Vance, you." Ivy barely started before Vanessa cut her off. "I'm fine now." Her gaze settled on the bright sunlight outside the window. "Or rather, I have to get better. For Nate. And for atonement." With astonishing willpower, Vanessa began rebuilding herself. She cooperated fully with treatment and gave up alcohol. She forced herself to eat, to sleep, and to drag herself back onto the track of a normal life. She threw herself back into work, handling company matters with even harsher discipline and sharper efficiency than before. Very quickly, she managed to stabilize the company's decline. But anyone who knew her could tell that the President Vance who once still carried a trace of warmth was gone. Now she was more like a precise and merciless machine, as if only endless work could fill the hollow inside her. But outside of work, she also began a hidden and painfully long search. She wanted to recover every trace Nate had left behind during the final stretch of his life. She wanted to know how her brother had survived those 5 months when she was absent from his life. So the first thing she did was ask Ivy to track down Summer, the woman who had made that post online. In a private room at a quiet cafe, Vanessa finally met the woman whose features carried a rough, street-hardened edge. When Summer saw Vanessa, her expression was complicated. There was sympathy in it, and blame, and also a faint sense of relief that this day had finally come. Summer let out a quiet sigh. "President Vance, you finally came. I tried to find you before, but your assistant stopped me. Back then, I really thought you didn't care about Nate at all anymore." "Heh, I cared." Vanessa's voice was low, with a tremor she could not quite hide. "I was just blind and stupid. Please tell me everything. Everything about Nate." Summer looked at the woman before her. A woman who seemed powerful on the outside, yet carried bottomless grief in her eyes. And in the end, her heart softened. Summer began telling the story from the very beginning, starting with that filthy rundown inn in the urban village. She spoke about Nate's innocence, and also his stubbornness. She talked about how he coughed up blood when his illness flared up, yet still refused to go to the hospital, and how she had to press him again and again before finally learning that he was terminally ill. She also told Vanessa how she had taken out every bit of savings she had, determined to get him treated. "He was too sensible," she said. "So sensible, it hurt to watch." Summer's eyes were red, and her voice began to shake. "He kept saying he couldn't drag me down. He said it wasn't easy for me to make money, and that I needed to save it for the auto repair shop I wanted to open one day. When he left, he only took a few clothes with him. And that old teddy bear. After that, I looked for him for a long time. I went everywhere I thought he might go. Hospitals, parks, underpasses, bridges. But this city was too big. No matter how hard I searched, I couldn't find him. At that point, Summer's voice finally broke. If only I had kept a closer eye on him back then. If only I had forced him to the hospital. Vanessa listened in silence, but her nails were already digging deep into her palms. So while she had been resenting him and hating him, there had been a complete stranger out there who gave Nate a brief stretch of warmth and shelter, and who had run all over the city trying to find him, while she, his real sister, had known nothing. Vanessa drew in a deep breath and said solemnly, "Thank you, Summer. Thank you for helping him when he was at his lowest. If you have any wish, or if there's anything you need from me, just say it." Summer shook her head. "There's nothing I want. I didn't make that post to ask for anything. I just wanted everyone to know that Nate was a good kid. He didn't deserve to be misunderstood like that." President Vance, if you really want to do something for him, then live well. Don't let his death mean nothing. Summer's words were almost exactly the same as what Nate had told her in that dream, and they struck Vanessa straight in the heart. After leaving the cafe, Vanessa followed the clues Summer gave her and went to that urban village. But years had passed, and the place had already been demolished. A brand new shopping complex now stood there. Standing at that bright, bustling intersection, Vanessa tried to picture how Nate had struggled to survive in a place like that. How he had kept his distance from that creepy man. And how he had been able to feel so happy over a part-time wage that was barely worth a few dozen bills. Wave after wave of dull pain churned through her chest. After that, she went to the supermarket and the market mentioned in the diary. She even found the pet hospital. The shop owner was still there, and Vanessa took out a photo of Nate. It was one she had saved from his phone. Nate at 17, smiling without a care in the world. Bright and heartbreakingly alive. The owner studied the photo for a long time, then finally shook his head. "Too many pets come through here every day. I can't really remember." But Vanessa refused to give up, so she began describing Ever in detail. A pale yellow mutt with an injured leg. The owner frowned and thought for a long time before answering hesitantly, I do remember something like that, but the details are fuzzy now." Vanessa did not lose heart. She used her connections to track down the police officer who had handled Nate's case back then. The old officer was close to retirement now, but the case had left a deep impression on him. He personally took Vanessa to the small grove by the river where Nate's body had been found. Standing beside the big tree near the river, the officer let out a long sigh. That boy, sigh, he was heartbreaking to look at. He was right there, quiet as anything, almost like he was asleep. "We investigated for a long time back then, but there was no sign of foul play. We checked the diary too. In the end, it was confirmed as suicide. He didn't leave much behind. Just that stuffed toy, the diary, and a little cash. We followed procedure and published notices looking for family, but no one ever came to claim him." The old officer looked at Vanessa, but in the end, he did not continue with what he had been about to say. Vanessa stood alone beneath that tree. The early summer wind passed through the leaves, stirring up a soft, rustling sound. Sunlight filtered through the branches, scattering mottled patches of light across the ground. The place was so quiet that the only thing she could hear was the gentle murmur of the flowing river nearby. Had Nate chosen to end his life here because this place was a little closer to Mom and Dad? In those final moments, as he looked at this quiet grove, what had been going through his mind? Had he remembered those childhood days when their parents took them out on little family outings? Vanessa slowly crouched down and ran her fingers over the rough bark, as if she could still feel the last trace of warmth her brother had left behind. Tears slid down soundlessly and fell into the soil below. In a trembling whisper, she murmured, "Nate, your sister is here. I'm sorry. I came too late." Her voice broke apart in the wind, so faint it felt as though it might disappear the next second. In the end, Vanessa went to the place where their parents were buried. Beside their shared grave, she found that small, unremarkable mound of earth. Based on the diary, this should have been the place where Ever was buried. The little mound was already covered in grass, with a few nameless wildflowers blooming over it. She carefully cleared away the weeds around it, little by little. Then, beside Ever's tiny grave, she personally buried a small and delicate urn. Inside it were the ashes of the original diary. After it had been cremated, she had asked someone to use special methods to cremate the diary cleanly and completely. Then, she brought those ashes back here herself. Gently stroking the little mound, she said in a low voice, "Ever, thank you for staying with Nate through those final days. And now, please keep staying here with him and with Mom and Dad. okay? After doing all of that, Vanessa stood before her parents' grave. Looking at the two kind faces in the photo on the headstone, she bowed deeply 3 times. Her voice was calm, but there was an unshakable firmness inside it. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. I failed to take care of my brother. But I promise you, from now on, I'll keep living well, carrying Nate's share with me too. And I'll do something with my life, so that Nate's death will not be meaningless. After returning to the city, Vanessa made a major decision. She held a press conference. There, she announced that she would pour most of her personal assets into a newly established charity, the Nate and Ever Foundation. The foundation would focus on 2 main directions. First, it would support teenage cancer patients from poor families by covering medical expenses and providing psychological care. Second, it would rescue stray animals and build a more structured shelter and adoption system. At that press conference, Vanessa spoke publicly about her brother Nate for the first time. She did not go into too many details. She only said, "My brother Nate received kindness from strangers during his lifetime, and he also experienced firsthand the cruelty, fragility, and hardship of life. This foundation was created to honor him, and also to help those who, like him, are struggling through illness and hardship. I hope every life can be treated with gentleness. And I hope every act of kindness can keep being passed on." What she did shocked the business world and moved countless ordinary people. The voices that once questioned her and mocked her gradually gave way to understanding and respect. At last, people understood that behind the cold image of President Vance was a wound this deep and a redemption carved out of pain. The foundation's work quickly began moving in full force. Vanessa handled almost everything herself, personally reviewing projects and decisions. She visited the children in hospitals who were receiving support. She also went to the rescue centers to see the stray animals waiting to be adopted. During that process, a few real, gentle expressions began to return to her face from time to time, even though the sadness in her eyes never truly left. But little by little, she seemed to have found a way to live alongside that pain. She often went to a children's hospital supported by the foundation. There, she would sit quietly outside the wards, watching those children fight desperately against illness. Once, she met a little boy suffering from the same illness Nate had. Chemotherapy had taken all his hair, but he still smiled at her with bright, stubborn optimism. In that instant, Vanessa felt as if she were seeing Nate as a child again. She walked over and gently touched the boy's head. Then she slipped a brand new motorcycle model into his arms. The look of pure delight that lit up the little boy's face finally sent one small ripple of warmth across the frozen lake inside her heart. She also tried to help Summer again, hoping to invest in an auto repair shop for her and help her fulfill the dream she had held on to all this time. But Summer still refused. "President Vance, I appreciate your kindness, but I still want to earn my own money with my own 2 hands." She smiled with that same easy, unburdened spirit. By then, Summer had already become a volunteer at the foundation. She helped coordinate stray animal rescue work there, and she felt that kind of life was full in its own way. Maybe this is what Nate would have wanted to see the most. All of us living well, each in our own way. Vanessa did not press her any further. She respected Summer's choice, and from the bottom of her heart, she was grateful that fate had at least allowed her brother to meet someone this loyal during the final stretch of his life. Back then, he always used to say that plain buns dipped in soy sauce were the greatest food in the world. Summer looked out the window, her voice calm and steady. "But I knew the truth. It wasn't that he actually thought it tasted amazing. He was just so hungry, he had no other choice. And yet, every time he talked about it, his eyes would light up like he was eating some royal feast." Vanessa sat there beside her, listening in silence. She had to dig her nails into her palm just to keep herself from breaking down in tears, because details like these were far more concrete than the words written in the diary, and they hurt even more, one cut after another, like a dull blade sawing at her heart. Only now did she truly understand how Nate had gotten through winter chewing on plain buns with cold water. Only now did she understand how he had curled up trembling in pain in the corner of the bed, yet still forced himself not to make a sound. And only now did she understand how that little dog, Ever, had licked away his tears with its wet tongue during the moments when he was most broken. She got the address from Summer, the urban village where Nate had once lived. Even though the place had long since been torn down and replaced by rows of high-rises, she still drove there by herself from time to time, parked by the roadside, and did absolutely nothing. She would simply sit there and stare at the newly built towers. And imagine how Nate had dragged that dying body of his, somehow forcing himself to survive there. At work, she still handled everything in perfect order. But that old, ruthless edge she used to have, that desperate, all-consuming drive, seemed to have faded. She gradually delegated more and more power instead of keeping every last detail under her own control. Outside, people said that after what happened with her brother, President Vance, had finally seen through it all and devoted herself wholeheartedly to charity. Only Ivy knew that Vanessa had never truly found peace inside. The photocopy of the diary in her study had been handled so many times that the edges were worn soft. Beside it sat towering stacks of documents: liver cancer treatment, end-of-life care, psychological intervention, every kind of material imaginable. It was as if she had turned her life into one impossibly long research project. And the subject of that project was the younger brother she had failed far too deeply, Nate. It was as though she were trying, over and over again inside her own mind, to revise a past that could never be revised. Time passed quickly. Before anyone realized it, 3 years had already gone by since that diary livestream that shocked the entire country. The Nate and Ever Foundation had already helped thousands of families. Vanessa herself had also received no small number of honors because of it. But on one rainy afternoon, she suddenly received a phone call from overseas. It was Hugo, the younger brother she had once adopted. On the other end of the line, Hugo's voice was hesitant and clearly worried. "I was sorting through some old things in the house you left overseas, and I found a photo album hidden away deep in storage. It was full of pictures of Nate when he was little, and there were also a few loose diary pages you wrote when you were younger, pages you never showed anyone. After reading them, I realized there may be things you've forgotten too. They're about the time right before and right after Mom and Dad died. Truths that feel blurred, almost deliberately hidden." Vanessa's hand trembled slightly around her phone. Outside the window, the raindrops kept tapping against the glass, making her chest tighten with unease. She told Hugo to send everything back immediately. A few days later, the package arrived. Along with the photo album were several yellowed pages. They were notes Vanessa had written in her teenage years, the handwriting sharp and rushed, the emotional turbulence obvious at a glance. What they recorded was the night before her parents' car accident. That night, a violent argument had erupted in the house. The reason was a major company decision. Her father was determined to gamble on it, and her mother supported him. But the younger Vanessa had opposed it with everything she had, even lashing out with bitter words. "If you do this, you're going to drag this entire family down." Those diary pages were filled with her resentment toward her parents' stubborn decision and with her fear of what the future might bring. And the very last line read, "If this family ever falls apart one day, it'll definitely be their fault." Those words, buried beneath time, felt like a rusted key, and in one brutal instant, they jammed open a door in Vanessa's memory, a door she had kept locked shut with all her strength. She collapsed back into the chair at once, cold sweat breaking out all over her body. Only then did she finally remember that on the day their parents died, because of how violently they had argued the night before, she had not even gone to see them off. And for all these years afterward, the sheer weight of grief and guilt had driven her to selectively forget that ugly memory. All she remembered was how good her parents had been to her, and how helpless she herself had felt back then. So while Nate had been enduring his illness alone, deep in her subconscious, she had also been carrying another layer of guilt over their parents' death. She had always believed Nate's departure was punishment for her own powerlessness. She had never once considered that maybe it was also fate's answer to the cruel words she had said back then. That stacked guilt, one layer pressed on top of another, nearly crushed her completely. She locked herself inside the study for 2 full days. When she finally came out, she said only one thing to Ivy: "I'm going to visit Nate and Ever, and Mom and Dad." At the cemetery, Nate and Ever's shared grave stood right beside their parents' grave. It was an arrangement she had made herself later on. In the photo, the boy's smile was still just as bright, and Ever sat obediently by his feet. Vanessa stood there in the drizzle, wearing a black coat, without an umbrella. She stared at the photo on the headstone for a long time, then slowly knelt down. She did not cry. She only reached out and gently wiped the drops of water from the picture. "Nate, I think your sister finally understands something now. All this time, I kept thinking I lost you because I wasn't good enough. But looking back now, maybe it started even earlier than that. Maybe our family had already been pushed onto a road that was always going to be hard to turn back from. Dad insisted on taking that gamble, and Mom stood with him. I was too young then, too reckless, and then later came your cursed illness. Everything twisted together, until it became what it became. Your sister was wrong. I was wrong because I was too young back then, and I said unforgivable things. I was wrong because in the years that followed, I was so obsessed with proving myself that I never saw through your clumsy, heartbreaking act. And I was wrong because after learning the truth, all I knew how to do was torture myself, and I almost forgot your final wish. You said you wanted your sister to be happy for the rest of her life. But before this, I always believed that was impossible. Without you, how could there be any happiness left for me? At that, she stopped. Rain streamed down through her hair and mixed with the tears she could no longer hold back. But now, I want to try. I'll keep watching over the Nate and Ever Foundation for you. I'll help more children like you. And I'll keep running the company, turning it into a place that can truly help more people. I'll also try to truly accept the life I have now, and that includes Hugo too. That boy hasn't had it easy either. Nate, I may never fully forgive myself for the rest of my life, but I promise you this. I won't bury myself in the past anymore. I'll carry my longing for you and keep living well, seriously and fully, because I think that's probably the only thing you ever truly wanted to see, right? She bent down and gently pressed her forehead against the cold headstone, as if she might still hear some kind of answer from the other side of life and death. The rain slowly came to a stop, and a faint strand of sunlight broke through the clouds and spilled into the cemetery. It lit up the white chrysanthemums she had just placed there, making the raindrops on the petals shimmer. Vanessa slowly rose to her feet, gave her brother's photo one last look, and turned away. Her steps were not as heavy as when she had arrived. They were still slow, but now there was a little more steadiness in them. The wind moved through the pine grove beside the cemetery with a soft rustling sound, like a sigh or like a whisper finally at peace. It felt as though the story could finally pause here for a while. A story about forgiveness, about redemption, and about how someone keeps moving forward while carrying a body full of wounds. At last, Vanessa's life had turned the page on its most painful and most brutal chapter, and begun writing what came next. Of course, those new pages would still be filled with deep longing. But perhaps, little by little, they would also begin to hold a quiet, gentle light that belonged to her alone. Vanessa's rhythm of life also began to shift in subtle ways. She was still busy, but it was no longer the kind of near-manic busyness driven by self-punishment. She began seeing a therapist regularly, forcing herself to confront the complicated emotions she still carried over her parents' deaths, as well as the almost uncontrollable protectiveness she once felt toward Nate and the boundless guilt that came after. The process was anything but easy. Insomnia and emotional relapses still came often, but she gritted her teeth and stayed with it. Her relationship with Hugo also slowly entered a new phase. Ever since she received that old photo album and those diary fragments, she had taken the initiative for the first time and made a long overseas call to Hugo. She did not spend much time explaining the old entanglements. She simply thanked him honestly for helping her see the buried corners of the past that she herself had forgotten. She also told Hugo that she understood he must have felt distance and unease all these years, and she made it clear that blood or no blood, from now on they were family, and she hoped that in the future, she and Hugo could slowly build a more genuine connection. Under her continued investment and more professional management, the Nate and Ever Foundation kept growing. She was no longer satisfied with offering financial aid alone. She began building a professional medical social work team to provide beneficiaries with psychological support and end-of-life care. At one of the foundation's annual galas, a young girl who had once received help took her hand. The girl was crying so hard her face was soaked with tears. "President Vance, thank you, and thank you too, Brother Nate. You gave me a second life." In that moment, what rose inside Vanessa was no longer just relief. It was a strange kind of peace, as if Nate's life really was continuing in another form. She still visited the cemetery, but she was no longer trapped there in grief every single time. Sometimes she brought a bouquet of sunflowers, Nate's favorite. Sometimes she simply sat there quietly for a while and told them what had been happening with the foundation. Or she would complain a little about the troubles of the company, just like she used to when her brother was still by her side. Once, she even placed a brand new toy in front of Ever's little gravestone and whispered, "Ever, take care of him for me." Time passed quickly, and before she realized it, another 2 years had gone by. After a business forum ended one day, Vanessa unexpectedly ran into someone familiar in the hotel lobby. It was reporter Lynn, the very first person who had found the diary and hosted that live stream. Reporter Lynn had now become a highly respected media figure in the industry. There was a little more wear at his temples now. He smiled, stepped forward, and greeted her first. There was also a trace of quiet searching in his eyes. "President Vance, long time no see." Vanessa gave a small nod, her tone calm. "Reporter Lin, long time no see." The two of them sat down in the hotel cafe. After a few pleasantries, Reporter Lin hesitated, then finally asked, "President Vance, these past few years, have you been doing all right?" Vanessa gently stirred the coffee in her cup. Her gaze swept across the glittering city outside the window before she said slowly, "I wouldn't call it good, and I wouldn't call it bad. I've just learned how to make peace with myself and how to live with the past. Maybe that's what growth is. It's just that the price I paid was too great. That diary changed a lot of people, me included. It made me understand much more deeply just how fragile life is and how heavy family love can be." Reporter Lin lowered his voice. "I've always wanted to find a proper chance to say thank you, and also I'm sorry. Back then, I was the one who exposed the truth in that way." Vanessa gave a faint shake of her head. "No, I'm the one who should be thanking you. You were the one who brought Nate's final voice to me. It was painful, yes, but without that diary, I might have gone on living forever inside the lie I built for myself. And that would have been the cruelest thing of all to him." After a moment of silence, Reporter Lin seemed to finally make up his mind. He took a slightly yellowed craft paper envelope out of his briefcase. Then he gently pushed it across the table toward Vanessa. Vanessa looked at him in confusion. "What is this?" Reporter Lin explained quietly. "This was found among Nate's belongings back then, together with the diary. At the time, I didn't think the timing was right, so I kept it in my care all these years. But now, I think it's time to give it to you." Vanessa felt her heartbeat skip. She took a deep breath before carefully opening the envelope. What was inside was not a letter. It was a color drawing, slightly faded with age. The paper had clearly been torn from some notebook, and the edges were uneven. On it was a scene drawn with colored pencils, every detail handled with obvious care. The sky was blue, the sun was bright, and the ground was covered in soft green grass. A girl with a ponytail and a radiant smile, clearly the younger Vanessa, was holding little Nate's hand with one hand, and the pale yellow dog Ever with the other. Their parents stood behind them, smiling with pure happiness on their faces. In the upper left corner of the drawing was a crooked but deeply earnest line of writing. "My family, by Nate. Wish. I hope my sister will always be happy." And on the back of the page was another line added later in smaller, messier handwriting, in darker ink. "Sis, I'm sorry." Tears blurred Vanessa's vision almost instantly. It was as if she could see that boy again. The one illness had reduced to skin and bone. In the final stretch of his life, enduring the pain, using trembling hands, drawing stroke by stroke the reunion he wanted most in his heart, the one he would never get to live. He carried no resentment, only apology and love. Vanessa clutched that thin sheet of paper tightly, as if it were the most precious thing in the world. While tears fell into the drawing, one drop at a time, she hurriedly wiped them away with her fingertips, afraid of blurring the traces her brother had left behind. Vanessa spoke through her tears, as if she were speaking to Reporter Lin, and also to herself. "He was thinking about me, all along." Reporter Lin's eyes were red as he gave a quiet nod. That night, Vanessa had the drawing carefully framed. Then, she placed it in her study, beside the photocopy of the diary. She stood there, in front of them for a very, very long time. In the days that followed, Vanessa would still be the President Vance who could shake the business world. She would also still be the strong founder of the Nate and Ever Foundation. But deep inside her heart, there would always be one place that stayed soft for that 18-year-old boy, and the little dog that stayed by his side. She no longer tried to forget. Instead, she chose to remember. Carrying that heavy love with her, she kept walking through this world, trying her best to live in the way he would have wanted to see. She knew the rainy seasons of life might still come again, but in her heart, she had already opened an eternal, warm umbrella for herself. And for Nate too. The ending of this story was not a perfectly happy one, but at the very least, it arrived at a kind of wholeness that was real, even with scars. Vanessa's life gradually settled into a new normal. That drawing called My Family became like a tiny beam of light, shining into the coldest corner of her heart. It did not erase her sorrow, but somehow it softened the sharpest part of her guilt. She finally understood that what Nate had left behind for her was never just pain and regret. He had also left her something that pure love and blessings just as clean. That realization finally gave Vanessa the strength to truly keep moving forward. She began planning her life more actively, instead of burying herself in work alone. She picked up oil painting again, something she had loved when she was younger, and even signed up for a weekend class. The smell of turpentine in the studio, the feel of the brush dragging across the canvas, all of it brought her a kind of peace she had not felt in a very long time. She painted landscapes and still lifes, but never people, especially not family. That drawing was Nate's one and only masterpiece. She could not bear to copy it, and she did not want to. Her relationship with Hugo also became more and more natural. After graduating from college, Hugo chose to return home and build his future there. He did not join the Vance Group. Instead, he earned his place at a tech startup to his own ability. Vanessa respected that choice. When he felt uncertain about his career path, she offered advice as someone who had walked ahead of him, rather than making decisions for him. From time to time, they would have meals together and talk about work and life, like a pair of siblings who had truly grown comfortable with each other. Once, Hugo brought his girlfriend to meet her, and the girl was obviously nervous. Vanessa simply smiled gently and handed her a red envelope. Treat each other well and be patient with each other. In that moment, she could not help thinking, if Nate were still here, maybe one day she would have lived through a scene just like this as his sister too. The Nate and Ever Foundation kept growing in influence and soon began working with the country's top medical research institutions, funding early liver cancer screening and targeted drug research. Vanessa was no longer just a financial backer. She personally took part in some project discussions and offered suggestions from the perspective of a patient's family member. At one project review meeting, a young researcher excitedly presented a new detection technology. That technology had the potential to increase the early detection rate of liver cancer by 30%. Vanessa listened quietly, but her eyes grew warm. She remembered that by the time Nate was diagnosed, it had already been too late. She dug her nails into her palm and forced the surge of emotion back down. If there had been a chance to catch it earlier back then. That thought only strengthened her resolve to keep supporting this kind of research. Life flowed on quietly like that, until one autumn afternoon, Vanessa received a call from a care facility. This time, it was not about Hugo, it was about Summer. Ms. Summer has fallen ill. It's the result of years of overwork, and the situation doesn't look very hopeful. Vanessa immediately canceled everything on her schedule and drove to that small city herself. The hospital room carried that faint, sterile smell of disinfectant. Summer was much thinner than Vanessa remembered. Her face was pale, but her eyes were still clear and still stubborn. When Summer saw Vanessa, she gave her a weak smile. "President Vance, you came." Vanessa sat down by the bed and gently took her thin hand in both of hers. "Don't call me that. Just call me Vanessa." But Summer shook her head and spoke only after catching her breath. "I'm used to it. Besides, you really are President Vance. I don't have much time left. There's something I've thought about for a long time, and I feel like I have to tell you." Vanessa's heart tightened instantly. "Go ahead." Summer's eyes drifted toward the window, as if reaching back into an old memory. "Before Nate died, he actually left words for you. That day, he was in really bad shape. He was in terrible pain, half-conscious the whole time. He grabbed my hand and said, 'Sister Summer, if my sister ever finds out everything one day, tell her this for me.'" Summer paused there, her breathing growing shallow. Vanessa quickly reached for the water and tried to hand it to her, but Summer only gave a faint wave and insisted on continuing. He said, "Tell her not to grieve for too long. Tell her to find someone who can stay by her side. Don't let her end up like Mom and Dad did, leaving her alone in this world. And tell her to eat hot meals every single day." Her voice grew weaker and weaker, until the last word was almost too soft to hear. Tears slid silently down Vanessa's face. "Don't grieve too long. Find someone. Eat hot meals." So this was Nate's final worry in the world. Choking on her tears, Vanessa lowered her head and buried her face in Summer's palm. "That foolish kid," Summer said softly. "He never blamed you. He always said his sister was the best sister in the world." A few days later, Summer passed away peacefully. Vanessa buried her not far from Nate's grave and laid down a bouquet of sunflowers. In a low voice, she said, "Now you can finally go see him." After that, Vanessa began taking meals seriously. She hired someone to make soup for her, and sometimes she even tried cooking for herself. The warmth rising from the kitchen always made her feel strangely grounded. One evening at dusk, Hugo called to say his project had succeeded, his voice bright with youthful energy. As Vanessa listened, the corners of her mouth lifted, without her even noticing. After hanging up, she walked into the study and looked at the drawing called My Family. This time, she did not cry. She only made a quiet promise. I'll live well. I'll keep going, carrying all the love you left me. She still visited the cemetery. But now, it felt more like visiting old friends. She would bring a thermos of tea, sit down, and quietly talk about what had been happening lately. Later, she moved My Family into her bedroom, where it reminded her that love had never really left. The Nate and Ever Foundation had now helped hundreds of thousands of people, and the early screening programs alone had saved countless lives. Each time she heard news like that, the regret inside Vanessa grew just a little lighter. At an international philanthropy forum, someone once said the name Nate and Ever carried a deeply Eastern idea. To remember the dead is in the end a way of learning how to cherish the living. Vanessa gave a quiet, relieved smile. Yes, this really did become the road I kept walking from then on. Hugo's project turned out to be a real success, and before long he began making a name for himself in the tech world. Later, he brought his girlfriend, Lin Wei, to meet Vanessa. The braised pork the girl made somehow carried a trace of the flavor their mother used to cook. And, for the first time in a long while, a small warmth rose inside Vanessa's heart. 10 years passed. Silver had touched Vanessa's temples, and her eyes had grown even quieter, even steadier. She gradually delegated more power, focusing her own energy on long-term strategy and on charity work. She also filled her garden with sunflowers and white chrysanthemums. Later, a documentary director reached out to her, hoping to film the story of the Nate and Ever Foundation. After a long silence, she agreed, but with one condition. It had to be truthful, and the focus had to remain on the real work the foundation was doing. On camera, she was composed and sharp as ever, and whenever she spoke about the foundation, there was still light in her eyes. Someone once asked her, "How did you finally come out of that darkness?" She answered calmly, "I didn't come out of it. I learned how to carry it with me. The people we love eventually become part of us." To me, Nate and Ever means carrying grief forward and turning it into more chances for life to keep going. When the documentary was released, it stirred a response that was quiet, but deeply far-reaching. Vanessa's story gradually became, for many people, a model of what it means to rebuild yourself after being shattered. On Hugo's wedding day, Vanessa sat below the stage, watching the bride and groom, and then glanced toward the seat that had been left empty for Nate. In a low voice, she murmured, "Some people may not be here in person, but I know they're still happy for us. Nate, your sister will live well." In time, Vanessa became a grandmother and held her granddaughter, Nianqing, in her arms. There was something in the little girl's eyes that reminded her of Nate. She often pushed the stroller through the sunflower garden, walking slowly among the flowers. She would lower her head and whisper, "Look, over there is your granduncle. And Ever too. They both love you very much." When Nianqing turned 3, she clearly called out Grandma for the first time, and that soft little voice brushed straight across Vanessa's heart. After that, Vanessa began spending more and more time telling her fairy tales, though she never spoke that one name aloud. By the time the Vance Group had fully become an industry benchmark, the Nate and Ever Foundation had already grown into something vast and flourishing. Vanessa gradually stepped into the background, tending the garden in peace and watching the flowers bloom and fade. One day, Nianqing pointed at the brightest star in the sky and said, "Grandma, that star is shiny." Vanessa smiled gently and replied, "Maybe your granduncle is up there, watching over us." On her 70th birthday, Hugo gave her a handmade photo album. On the very first page was a recreation of my family, and beside it in crooked handwriting were the words, "Great-grandpa, great-grandma, granduncle, Ever, and me." The last few pages had been left blank on purpose, with a note tucked inside. "In the days ahead, let's keep filling this together." Vanessa brushed her fingertips lightly over the photographs. Her eyes glistened, but a faint smile stayed at the corners of her mouth. That gift made her finally understand all the way through that Nate had never been forgotten. He had simply become part of the family's memory in a gentler form. In her later years, Vanessa began sorting through old belongings one by one, labeling them carefully so that someday Nianqing would understand where this family had come from and what road it had walked. In the end, President Vance, who had devoted her life to charity and rescue work, passed away quietly. With tears in her eyes, her final murmur was, "Mom, Dad, Nate, you came for me. I'm sorry. Your sister failed to take care of you." Everyone at her bedside fell silent. No one had ever seen an old woman cry with that much sorrow. And yet, when she finally left, her expression was peaceful, with the faint, satisfied smile of a child on her face.